No one touches the royal wolf unless he chooses them, Alpha King Everett Hale said. And the entire grand hall went so quiet Clara Whitaker could hear rain ticking against the glass roof 70 feet above her head. She was not supposed to be there. Not really. She was a junior Sen archivist from the Pack Registry, which meant she lived 3 floors below important people and spent most of her days labeling old oath records that smelled like dust, cedar, and somebody else's bad decisions. Tonight, she was only delivering a locked archive box to the High Council before slipping back downstairs unnoticed. That had been the plan. Plans, Clara had learned, were usually just jokes the universe told before ruining your shoes. Her gray uniform was damp from the Denver rain. One sleeve was caught under the strap of the heavy box, and a curl of pale blonde hair had escaped her braid and stuck to her cheek. Around her, noble Omegas stood in white gowns and family diamonds, each one polished for the Luna selection ceremony, like she had been born under perfect lighting. Clara looked like staff. Worse, she looked like wet staff. Lady Vanessa Carrington noticed first. Of course she did. Vanessa had the kind of smile that could make an insult sound like charity. Someone from records got lost, she said softly, just loud enough for the nearby packs to hear. A few people laughed into their champagne. Clara tightened her grip on the box and kept walking. She had survived worse than rich girls with expensive perfume and excellent posture. At the far end of the hall, beside the black stone throne, lay Oral, the royal wolf. Silver fur, amber eyes, 300 years of Pack legend breathing under the chandeliers. Every child in the Western Territories knew the story. Oral had served the Hale throne since the first Alpha King crossed the Rockies. He had watched wars end, treaties break, and lunas come and go. He bowed to no one but the crown. He never begged, never played, never wagged his tail. Not once in 300 years. Clara kept her eyes down because that was what low-ranking Omegas did around royal power. Polite, quiet, forgettable. Then the archive box warmed in her hands. Not hot, not burning, just a strange pulse, like a heartbeat waking under old leather. Clara stopped. Across the hall, Oral lifted his head. Conversations thinned. A councilman's glass paused halfway to his mouth. Everett Hale turned from the noblewoman standing before him. He was taller than Clara expected, dark-haired, sharp-jawed, wearing a black formal coat that made every other alpha in the room look overdressed and underqualified. His expression did not change, but something in the air did. Pressure. Recognition. A low pull behind Clara's ribs. Oral stood. No one moved. Even Vanessa went still. The wolf stepped off the throne platform and crossed the polished floor, slow and certain, passing every noble Omega without a glance. Clara's common sense suggested backing away. Her feet, apparently, had resigned. Oral stopped in front of her muddy boots, lowered his massive head, and pressed his nose against her hand. Then his tail moved. Once, a soft silver sweep against the marble. The sound was nothing. The meaning was everything. Somewhere behind her, a woman gasped. Counselor Malcolm Reed whispered, "Impossible." Clara looked up and found Everett staring at her like she had just opened a door in his chest he had spent his whole life pretending was a wall. For 3 whole seconds, nobody knew what to do with the fact that the most feared wolf in the Western Territories had just acted like Clara Whitaker was the only person in the room worth acknowledging. Clara looked down at Oral's silver head pressed against her hand and tried to remember how breathing worked. The archive box was still warm against her ribs. The pull in her chest had not gone away. It sat there, quiet and stubborn, like a doorbell someone refused to stop pressing. "Step away from the animal," Counselor Malcolm Reed ordered. His voice cut through the silence, polished and sharp. Oral did not step away. Clara, who had been raised with a healthy respect for ancient wolves, royal law, and keeping her job, attempted a small step backward. Oral moved with her and gently placed one massive paw on the toe of her wet, black shoe. Not hard, just enough to say the discussion had ended. Somewhere behind her, one of the guards made a sound that was dangerously close to a laugh. Alpha King Everett Hale did not laugh. He came down from the throne platform slowly, every step measured, his dark eyes fixed on Oral first, then Clara. The closer he came, the stronger that strange pull became. Clara hated that. She had no room in her life for royal mysteries. She had rent, student loans from Pack Registry training, and a basement office with one heater that sounded like it was trying to confess a crime. Your name? Everett said. Clara swallowed. Clara Whitaker, Your Majesty. Junior Sent Archivist. I was told to deliver the Hale Carrington Treaty records before the ceremony. A clerk, Lady Vanessa Carrington said, her smile returning with fresh confidence. That explains the confusion. Clara glanced at her. Archivist, she corrected. Clerk is the person who files your apology after you lose something important. The silence that followed was beautiful, terrible, and probably career-ending. Vanessa's smile froze. Everett's mouth did not move, but something near his eyes changed. Oral's tail gave one pleased thump against the marble. Counselor Reed stepped forward. This is clearly an interference event. The box may contain scent residue. The girl may have mishandled royal records. The girl is standing right here, Clara said before she could stop herself. Reed looked at her the way rich people looked at a dent in a new car. Then the girl should understand the seriousness of contaminating a Luna selection. Clara lifted the box slightly. It has 3 locks, 2 seals, and a handling charm signed by your office. If this box can trick a 300-year-old royal wolf, Counselor, maybe the wolf is not the problem. A second guard coughed into his fist. Oral looked proud of her, which was not helping. Everett stopped beside the wolf and lowered his voice. Oral. The command carried enough alpha pressure to make half the room drop their eyes. Clara felt it move over her skin like a cold wind. Oral only looked up at his king, then leaned more firmly against Clara's leg. Everett went very still. That was when Clara understood this was bigger than embarrassment. In pack hierarchy, a royal wolf ignoring its alpha king in public was not cute. It was a crack in the throne. Reed saw it too. His face tightened with something that looked a lot like opportunity. For the stability of the crown, he said, Miss Whitaker should be removed until we determine what she has done. Oral's ears flattened. Clara felt the warning in the room before anyone spoke. Everett raised one hand, and every guard stopped moving. His gaze remained on Clara. Not soft, not trusting, but not cruel either. Miss Whitaker will leave the hall, he said. No one touches her. Clara should have been relieved. Instead, the words landed wrong. Protected, but not believed. She nodded once, because low-ranking Omegas learned early how to carry humiliation without spilling it. She turned toward the side doors, holding the archive box tight. Her shoes squeaked on the marble. Behind her, fabric rustled, whispers started, and Vanessa said something too quiet to catch but sharp enough to feel. Then the whole hall gasped again. Clara looked back. Oral had left the throne platform completely and was walking after her, calm as Sunday morning, leaving Alpha King Everett Hale standing alone in front of every pack leader in the West. The private war room smelled like cedar, cold coffee, and men who believed silence counted as leadership. Clara stood beside a table covered in territory maps, while Alpha King Everett Hale watched Oral make himself comfortable under the eastern border like he had personally redrawn it. The royal wolf had followed her through 2 guarded hallways, 1 security checkpoint, and a very awkward elevator ride, without asking anyone for permission. Clara had tried saying, "You should stay with your king." Oral had looked at her as if she had said something adorable and completely useless. Now Everett stood across from her in his black formal coat, jaw tight, hands resting on the edge of the table. Explain what happened in the hall. Clara shifted the archive box against her hip. That is a little broad, Your Majesty. Do you mean the part where your wolf chose my shoe as government property, or the part where your council decided I was a national emergency? Oral's tail thumped once beneath the table. Everett glanced down. Do not encourage her. Clara blinked. Was that for me or the wolf? Both. It should not have made her want to smile. It did, which was inconvenient. She set the box on the table and unlocked the first seal with her registry pin. I did not contaminate the ceremony. I did not tamper with Oral. I brought the Hale Carrington Treaty records because Counselor Reed requested them before the Luna selection. Why would Reed need those records tonight? Everett asked. That is the first smart question anyone has asked me all evening. His eyes lifted to hers. The room seemed to tighten. Clara looked away first, not because she was afraid, but because the pull in her chest had started again, low and steady, like a rope drawn through her ribs. She hated how clearly she felt him. Not love, not trust, nothing that simple. More like recognition from a life she had not agreed to remember. Everett noticed. Of course he noticed. Kings probably noticed when dust changed direction. You felt something, he said. Clara kept her voice even. I work with scent records. Old bonds leave traces. Sometimes people feel strange around them. People, he repeated. Not you specifically. I am people. Oral gave a quiet huff that sounded rude enough to be a full sentence. Everett slowly lowered his gaze to the wolf. You are enjoying this. Oral rested his chin on Clara's wet shoe. Clara sighed. He is making a point. And what point is that? Possibly that both of you are terrible at direct communication. For half a second, Everett Hale looked less like the most powerful alpha in the Western Territories and more like a man trying not to react in front of a woman who had just guessed too much. Then the king returned, clean and controlled. Miss Whitaker, what exactly do you do in the registry? Clara opened the box and lifted out a leather folder stamped with the Hale crest. I verify inheritance scent, oath bonds, treaty markers, and marriage records. When a pack claims bloodline rights, I confirm whether the scent trail supports it. That sounds clerical. It sounds boring, which is why powerful people keep forgetting it can ruin them. His expression sharpened. Clara wished she had said that less honestly. She pulled the top record free, but the corner of her bare thumb brushed the old royal seal before she could put her glove back on. The room vanished. Not fully. Not like a dream. More like a radio station breaking through static. A woman crying in the dark. A male voice saying, hide the true Luna bloodline before the council finds her. Oral howling, not with anger, but grief. Then another voice, older and colder. History will remember what we write. Clara jerked back so fast the chair behind her scraped the floor. Everett was around the table in a breath. He did not touch her. He stopped himself inches away, one hand half raised, his control suddenly looking less like strength and more like pain. What did you see? Clara pressed her palm against the table until the wood steadied beneath her. Oral had risen, ears forward, eyes fixed on the seal. The wolf was not playful now. He looked ancient. He looked tired. Clara swallowed, and for the first time since entering the citadel, she was truly afraid. I think your wolf did not wag his tail because he was happy, she said quietly. I think he recognized something the throne buried 300 years ago. By sunrise, Counselor Malcolm Reed had done what powerful men did best when the truth started breathing too close to their necks. He called it a misunderstanding and scheduled a public test. Clara found out from a guard with kind eyes and terrible timing, who handed her a clean gray jacket from the registry and said, Council wants you in the Grand Hall in 10 minutes. Clara stared at him. That sounds less like a request and more like a trap with chairs. The guard looked down the hallway. There are definitely chairs. Oral, lying across her doorway like a silver barricade, lifted his head and gave the guard a look that suggested the chairs were not the problem. Clara had slept maybe 1 hour in a guest room that was too nice to feel safe. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the echo again. Hide the true Luna bloodline. History will remember what we write. The words sat in her skull like a cold coin. When she entered the Grand Hall, it looked almost exactly as it had the night before, which somehow made it worse. Same chandeliers, same polished floor, same noble omegas standing in perfect lines. The only difference was that now every pair of eyes turned toward her like she had walked in carrying a match near dry grass. Everett stood near the throne, dressed in a dark suit instead of ceremony black, looking like a man who had not slept and had decided nobody else should be comfortable either. Their eyes met. The pull in Clara's chest tightened. He looked away first, but not fast enough. Reed stepped onto the center platform. For the stability of the Western Territories, we will repeat the traditional mate recognition test under full council witness. No rumors. No emotional overreaction. No registry errors. Clara muttered, nice to be included. Oral walked beside her, calm and enormous, his shoulder brushing her hip. Vanessa Carrington stepped forward first, all white silk and diamond confidence. She offered her wrist to Oral with a smile trained for portraits. Royal Guardian, she said sweetly. I come with respect for the crown. Oral sniffed once, then sneezed directly onto her glove. A sound passed through the room that was not laughter only because everyone valued survival. Vanessa's face went pink under perfect makeup. The next candidate approached. Oral turned his head. The next one tried a ceremonial bow. Oral yawned so wide Clara could see every tooth and several opinions. One by one, the noble Omegas presented themselves, and one by one, the ancient wolf rejected them with the bored efficiency of airport security on a Monday morning. Reed's jaw tightened. "Miss Whitaker," he said. "Step forward." Everett's voice cut in. "No." The room went still. Reed turned slowly. "Your Majesty." Refusing her participation will only deepen suspicion. Everett looked at Clara, and for a second the king was gone. There was only a man caught between a throne and the one person his wolf had chosen. Clara could have let him protect her. She could have stepped back and let duty swallow the moment. Instead, she walked forward. "It is fine," she said, though it was not. "I am tired of being treated like a rumor." Oral rose before she reached him. He did not sniff her wrist. He did not circle her. He lowered his great silver head until his brow nearly touched the marble. A bow. To a low-ranking Omega in a borrowed jacket. The mate bond flashed through the room like heat lightning, silent and impossible to pretend away. Everett's hand closed around the arm of the throne. Clara felt it too, deep and aching. Not a command, not a claim, but a truth waiting to be chosen with open eyes. Then Oral nudged something from beneath the throne platform. A moonstone collar, old as the Hale crown, slid across the floor and stopped at Clara's feet. Reed whispered, "That cannot be." Clara looked from the collar to Everett. His face had gone pale, because every wolf in the room knew what the gesture meant. The royal wolf had not just recognized her. He had named her Luna before the entire pack. The moonstone collar lay at Clara's feet like a question nobody in the grand hall wanted answered. It was beautiful in the worst possible way, silver links woven through pale stone, old enough to belong in a museum and heavy enough to ruin her life. Clara did not pick it up. She was not stupid. Low-ranking Omegas did not touch royal lunar relics in front of half the Western territories unless they wanted to become a headline, a scandal, or a cautionary story told to registry interns. Oral, unfortunately, had no respect for career planning. He nudged the collar closer with his nose and looked at her like she was being difficult on purpose. "No," Clara whispered. His tail moved once. Still no. Across the hall, Lady Vanessa Carrington looked as if someone had slapped her family portrait off the wall. Counselor Reed recovered first, because men like him always kept a spare version of reality in their pocket. "This test is compromised," he announced. "The wolf is reacting to old scent residue from the archive box." Clara looked at the sealed box sitting 20 feet away on a council table. "That box is farther from me than my apartment is from a working heater." A few guards looked down fast. Everett did not smile. He stood beside the throne with one hand still gripping the carved armrest, his face controlled, but his scent had changed. Cedar and storm air. Pressure held too tightly. Clara felt the mate bond pull again, deep and steady, and for one painful second, she thought he might step down from that platform, stand beside her, and end the argument with one clear sentence. He did step forward. Then Reed said, "Your Majesty, 3 border packs are waiting on this union. The Carrington Alliance secures grain routes, winter patrols, and council majority. If you recognize an unverified registry Omega tonight, you do not gain a Luna. You trigger a succession crisis." The words landed exactly where they were meant to land. Not on Clara, on the crown. Vanessa lowered her lashes, suddenly gentle. "No one blames Miss Whitaker," she said. "Some Omegas are simply not prepared for the weight of royal attention." Clara almost laughed. It would have sounded sharp enough to cut glass. Everett looked at her then, and there it was. Not rejection, something worse. Calculation wrapped around fear. Duty standing in front of truth with both arms crossed. "The ceremony is suspended," he said. The hall inhaled. Clara waited. Oral waited. The bond waited. Everett's jaw tightened. "Miss Whitaker will return to the registry until the council verifies the records." Clara nodded once. It was amazing how quickly a heart could understand what the ears tried to soften. He had not denied her. He had not chosen her either. That was the kind of wound powerful people called patience because they did not have to bleed from it. "Of course, Your Majesty," she said. Her voice came out calm, which felt like a small private miracle. Oral gave a low sound, not a growl, not exactly. Everett looked at him. "Oral." The royal wolf stared back, then turned away from his king in front of everyone. The room went colder than the Denver rain outside. Clara left before anyone could see her hands shake. Down in the archive basement, fluorescent lights buzzed above rows of scent records and locked bloodline drawers. She should have gone home. She should have cried in the staff bathroom like a normal person with a terrible evening. Instead, She pulled every Hale record from 300 years ago. At 2:31 in the morning, she found the gap. One Luna file had been removed and replaced with a perfect copy written decades later. The ink was wrong. The scent was wrong. And pressed into the replacement seal was a crest Clara had seen all night on diamond earrings and white silk gloves. Carrington. Clara stared at the Carrington crest until the archive lights flickered overhead and made the silver mark look like it was breathing. It sat pressed into the replacement seal, neat and arrogant, the kind of mistake rich families made when they had gone too long without consequences. She pulled on clean gloves, opened the oldest Hale drawer, and began comparing scent traces one by one. By 4 in the morning, her coffee was cold, her eyes burned, and the truth was no longer hiding. It was standing in front of her with muddy boots and a name history had tried to erase. The first Luna of the Hale throne had not been a Carrington bride. She had been Mara Vale, an Omega field healer from a mountain pack with no money, no political backing, and a gift for calming wolves no one else could touch. 300 years ago, Mara had saved Oral during an uprising against the first Alpha King. The bond between her and the throne had been real. The records proved it. Then, 6 months later, her name vanished. A Carrington daughter appeared in her place. The ink changed. The scent changed. The story changed. Clara sat back slowly. "You poor thing," she whispered, and she was not sure whether she meant Mara, Oral, or the entire pack that had been fed a polished lie for 3 centuries. A low voice came from the aisle behind her. "Step away from the drawer, Miss Whitaker." Counselor Reed stood between 2 security wolves, dressed like a man who had expected to find her there. Clara closed the file with one hand. "You sent me the treaty box on purpose." Reed smiled without warmth. "I sent a registry employee to deliver records. What happened after that was your ambition showing itself." "That is funny," Clara said. "I was aiming for overtime pay." His smile thinned. "You accessed restricted royal bloodline files after being dismissed from the Luna proceeding. Because someone forged them. Because you needed a story that made you important." The words hit harder than she wanted them to. Not because they were true, but because people like Reed knew exactly where to press. Before Clara could answer, Everett entered the archive. His coat was unbuttoned, his hair less perfect than usual, and his eyes went straight to her before he looked at anyone else. For 1 second, Clara felt the bond pull tight with relief. Then Reed handed him a copied page. "Your Majesty," she was found altering ancestral records connected to the Carrington alliance. Clara laughed once, quiet and stunned. "That is not what happened." Everett looked at the drawer, the seal, the open files, then at her. She waited for him to ask her. Not the council, not the room, her. Instead, his face closed around duty again. "Clara," he said carefully, "until this is reviewed, you cannot remain in the archive." There it was, her name in his mouth, softer than before, and still not enough. "You do not trust me." His jaw tightened. "I am trying to keep you safe." Safe is not the same as believed. No one spoke after that. Reed watched like a man enjoying a private meal. Everett gave the order himself. Clara would be held in the East Tower under royal protection. The phrase sounded almost kind until the door locked behind her. The room was warm, clean, and high above the city, with a view of Denver waking under pale winter light. A beautiful cage was still a cage. Clara sat on the edge of the bed and finally let her hands shake. Near noon, footsteps stopped outside her door. A guard whispered, "Your Majesty, he will not move." Clara stood. Through the narrow window in the door, she saw Oral lying across the hallway, silver body blocking every entrance, his untouched food bowl beside him. Everett stood 10 feet away, looking at his wolf, then at Clara behind the locked door. Oral did not blink. He had chosen his side. By late afternoon, the East Tower had become the most polite hostage situation Clara had ever heard of. A tray of soup arrived every hour. Fresh towels appeared. A guard asked if she preferred tea or coffee, then looked deeply uncomfortable when Clara said she preferred doors that opened from the inside. Outside, Oral had not moved. Not for Reed. Not for the captain of security. Not even for Everett, who stood in the hallway with one hand braced against the wall like the citadel itself had finally become heavier than he could carry. Clara watched him through the narrow glass. "You know this is ridiculous," she said through the door. Everett looked at her. His eyes were tired. "He has refused food for 6 hours. I meant locking up the one person your wolf clearly trusts. His mouth tightened. I made the wrong call. The words landed softly, but Clara did not let them melt anything yet. That is a start. It is not a key. Everett looked down. For a moment, the Alpha King was gone again, and the man underneath looked younger, cornered by a crown he had inherited before he learned how to be wrong out loud. Reed has the council chamber sealed. If I release you without proof, he will call it maid influence. Clara let out a small laugh. So the plan is to protect me until he ruins me properly? He had no answer. That was answer enough. After he left, the young guard with kind eyes returned to collect the untouched soup. He did not look at Clara when he said, "Old service stairs run behind the linen closet. They have been broken for years." Clara stared at him. That is a strangely specific maintenance complaint. The cameras on that hall are also broken. You should get that fixed. Yes, ma'am. He walked away, leaving the door not quite latched. Clara stood still for 3 full breaths. She could run. She could leave Denver Citadel, take a bus south, change her name, and spend the rest of her life cataloging normal paperwork for people whose wolves did not make political statements. Then Oral gave one quiet whine outside the door, low and ancient and tired. Clara closed her eyes. "Fine," she whispered. "But if I lose my job, I am blaming the dog." Oral huffed like he understood and was offended by the noun. 10 minutes later, Clara slipped through the service stairs with the forged Luna file tucked under her jacket. She did not go to the exit. She went down, past the archive basement, into the oldest part of the Citadel, where the walls changed from concrete to mountain stone, and the air smelled like cold iron and pine roots. The Hall of Oaths waited beneath the throne room, sealed behind a round door carved with every pack crest in the Western Territories. Clara pressed her registry pin to the lock. Nothing happened. Then she placed her bare hand over the Hale crest. The mate bond pulled hard enough to make her knees weak. The door opened. Inside, the treaty stone stood in the center of the chamber, black and silver, taller than Clara's shoulder, covered in names that had shaped the pack long before anyone thought to ask an Omega what she remembered. Clara laid the forged file against it. The stone stayed dark. "Come on," she said, voice shaking. "You kept the lie. You can keep the truth." She removed her gloves and pressed both palms to the stone. The first echo hit like winter through an open window. Mara Vale's fear. Oral's grief. The first Alpha King begging someone to hide his true mate before the council erased them both. Clara gasped but did not pull away. The memories burned cold, not on her skin, but somewhere deeper, where her gift lived. Footsteps pounded behind her. Everett's voice broke across the hall. "Clara, stop." She looked back at him, pale and shaking. "I cannot just prove I am innocent," she said. "I have to prove she existed." Everett crossed the floor and dropped beside her, not as a king giving an order, but as a man asking for mercy. "This could take your gift." Clara managed a small, sad smile. "Then make sure the pack hears it." The treaty stone flared silver, and a woman's voice, lost for 300 years, filled the Citadel. "Something went wrong while processing your request. Please try again. Retry." By morning, the Grand Hall looked smaller without all the lies standing in it. The chandeliers still shone. The black throne still waited at the far end. The council benches were still packed with alphas, betas, and territory leaders pretending they had not spent the last 12 hours learning their history from an Omega they had tried to lock away. But something had shifted. People stood differently around Clara now. Not softer exactly. More careful. Like they had finally realized quiet did not mean harmless, and low rank did not mean low worth. Counselor Reed's chair sat empty, his crest covered until the packs could vote on a replacement. Lady Vanessa Carrington stood with her family near the side doors, pale and silent, her diamond earrings gone. No one shouted at her. No one needed to. The truth had done its work in public, and public shame was a cleaner blade than revenge. Clara watched 2 registry officers carry Mara Vale's restored file toward the Royal Archive, wrapped in blue cloth. 300 years late, but still going home. Everett stood beside the throne, not on it. That mattered. He had not slept. Neither had Clara. The mate bond between them felt quieter now, not weaker, just less like thunder and more like a road neither of them had agreed to walk blindly. Oral sat at Clara's feet with the smug patience of a wolf who believed he had personally repaired the government. when a council elder cleared his throat and asked if Clara would accept immediate recognition as Royal Luna, Everett turned before she could answer. No, he said. The room stiffened. Clara looked at him. Everett kept his eyes on the council. You will not turn her sacrifice into another ceremony she did not choose. For a moment, Clara forgot how tired she was. The elder frowned. Your Majesty, the wolf named her. Oral recognized her. Everett said. The throne owes her respect. I owe her trust. Those are not the same as ownership. Oral's tail tapped the floor once, approving and obnoxious. Clara almost laughed, but her throat tightened instead. Everett stepped down from the platform and stopped a few feet away from her, close enough for honesty, far enough for choice. Clara Whitaker, he said, and this time her name sounded nothing like a sentence being read from a report. I failed you when I let duty speak louder than truth. I cannot undo that. I can only spend whatever time you allow proving I learned from it. The whole hall seemed to hold its breath. Clara looked at the throne, then the archive doors, then the wolf who had waited 3 centuries for one honest person to listen. I will stay, she said, as royal scent keeper. Not Luna. Not yet. A few nobles shifted like they had bitten into lemon. Clara let them. If this pack wants a future, it can start by learning that an Omega does not become valuable when a king chooses her. She was valuable before he was brave enough to admit it. Everett bowed his head. Not a royal nod. A real one. Then I will earn your trust from there. Weeks later, Mara Vale's name was carved into the Hall of Oaths beneath the first Alpha Kings, not hidden in a drawer, not softened for noble comfort. Clara stood on the archive balcony while Denver glittered below, the city loud and alive beyond the citadel walls. Everett stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, saying nothing because he had finally learned silence could be respect when it was not fear. Oral lay between them, tail sweeping lazily across Clara's boot every few seconds. He is going to keep doing that, is he not? Everett asked. Clara looked down at the ancient royal wolf, who appeared deeply committed to embarrassing kings for the rest of his life. Probably. Everett's mouth curved, barely. Good. Clara smiled then, small but real. Power had tried to erase Mara. Pride had almost cost Everett his mate. Loyalty had waited 300 years in the body of a wolf who refused to pretend. And love, Clara thought, was not the bond that pulled hardest. It was the choice that stayed after the room stopped watching.